From the Mumbai studios of Republic TV, it's time for The Debate.
Good evening. My name is Niranjan and I'm filling in for Arnab Goswami, who will be back on the show very, very soon. There is a slight improvement in India's COVID situation right now, and there are supplies of oxygen, medication that are being delivered rapidly in comparison with last month. There is a bigger battle to be won, and the question is, what can we do to blunt a possible third wave? That's debate number one. There's a vaccine crunch in India. The vaccination rate has gone down this week in the last few days, and we need to look at that very, very closely. India needs to get vaccinated. With the concerns we need to discuss, debate number two at 10 p.m. The ground reality on India's COVID battle, dedicated broadcast on Republic TV as we get you reports from the hinterland, from every corner of India. And the government expert panel at 10:30, live on Republic TV. The entire panel is live, and we ask them all the questions about the second wave and a possible third wave. Here are the headlines.
इसका मतलब है किसी एक जीवन को जरूरी सुरक्षा कवच नहीं दे पाना.
Prime Minister conducts district level review meeting, warns against vaccine wastage.
Prime Minister called a meeting and invited the chief ministers, and all the chief ministers were sitting just like puppet.
Political face-off over the Prime Minister's meeting. Mamata Banerjee claims chief ministers were not allowed to speak. The centre puts a few facts on record. Expert panel warns on slowing down of the vaccine drive in the face of a possible third wave. Both states notifying black fungus as an epidemic centre, assuring on the drug availability. Two farmers, part of the Singhu protest at the Delhi borders, reported dead. Officials say one was COVID positive. Navy teams continue rescue operations for 26 missing crew members of P305 barge. 49 are reported dead. Vaccines are the biggest weapon that India has in the battle against COVID-19, and as we cross the second wave peak, we have crossed the second wave peak. A slowdown, however, in the vaccine drive is posing a threat to our fight against the virus. Here's how the vaccine graph is looking tonight, and then we have a panel of experts joining us on this broadcast.
India seems to be plateauing the COVID curve. The country has recorded less than 3 lakh new cases for 4 consecutive days now.
अगर हम डेली केसेस और डेथ को फर्दर एनालाइज करें तो पाते हैं कि जहां 7 मई को देश में 4 लाख से अधिक यानी कि 4,14,000 के करीब डेली न्यू केसेस रिपोर्ट हुए थे, वह पिछले 13 दिनों से घटते हुए 3,62,000 से 3,48,43, 2,81,000 और अब पिछले 24 घंटे में 2,76,000 केसेस के करीब देश में नोट किए गए हैं.
But what is raising concern is India's slow vaccine drive. The last 6 days show a worrying pattern. On May 16th, India administered only 6.8 lakh doses of vaccine, and on May 19th, a little above 11.5 lakh jabs were administered. Expert panel of the government has warned against the slowing down of vaccine drive in the face of a possible third wave.
I think both increasing the vaccination and ramping up our personal protection, and the third is most important is really taking this wake-up call and ramping up our basic healthcare infrastructure so we don't get overwhelmed. I think if we follow this three-pronged attack, I think we can take on any wave that comes our way.
The government acknowledges vaccine shortage and is working to ramp up production across board.
For effectively ending the pandemic, more COVID-19 vaccines need to be developed, and once proven to be both safe and efficacious against the virus, must be deployed rapidly across the world.
With India gaining a grip on COVID numbers, we can't let our vaccination figures hamper a fight. Let's debate.
And joining us on the panel this evening are Dr. Uma Kumar, HOD of Rheumatology Department at AIIMS, Dr. Aviral Roy, Senior Consultant, Critical Care and Internal Medicine, Medica Group of Hospitals in Kolkata. Good evening, Dr. Roy. Dr. Behram Pardiwala, who's the Head of Medicine Department and Director of Academics at the Wockhardt Hospital in Delhi. Keval Handa, Non-Executive Chairman at Union Bank and former MD at Pfizer. Dr. Sameer Gupta is on the show. He's Co-Chair, Health Committee, PhD Chamber and Director, Cardiac Cath Lab, Metro Hospital and Heart Institute in Delhi. And Dr. Anil Boraskar, a diabetologist, Asian Heart Institute, Raheja Hospital and Asian Cancer Hospital. He's also the Honorable Secretary at the Diabetic Association of India. Let me start with Dr. Aviral Roy. Dr. Roy, speaking about a possible third wave, and we've had experts, from both the medical field and those who've been studying the pandemic and advising the government. Now, all of them have, of course, just one solution for India in the next few months, which are very, very critical, that of vaccination. And the vaccination numbers have gone down in the last few days, and it's critical. Now, as an expert, as a medical expert, what is your observation and what is the way forward?
First of all, thank you so much for inviting me. So, like you're right, the rate of vaccination has gone down. The way forward, as evidenced by multiple countries, including Israel, including the United States, is clearly just aggressively getting vaccine available and pushing it as aggressively as possible. In fact, even if needed, making it mandatory. You look at Israel, you look at the US, their numbers are coming down enormously to the point where they're almost fully open. And there is no return to real life now unless you have an aggressive vaccination strategy in place. You want to look at past precedent, look at pulse polio. We eradicated polio through multiple years of super aggressive vaccinations in our population. So if you really want to have any control on COVID-19, you just have to be super aggressive. Otherwise, the third wave is just inevitable. It's just a question of if and not when. Yeah.
Let me take the next question to Dr. Uma Kumar. Dr. Uma Kumar, when we look at the numbers and the statistics, etc., just as a medical expert, wanted to get your views on, we've seen how the second wave in India has been more aggressive than the first. The numbers, the severity, the population that has been affected. But locally, Delhi has seen 4 waves. That's what the government in Delhi says, that they've seen 4 waves. And Madhya Pradesh did not see a sharp peak until recently. Now, will the third wave, possible third wave, be evenly spread, or is there a risk of some regions being more hit than the rest of India?
Thank you, Niranjan, for having me on the show. There are multiple factors which affect the occurrence of various waves. It's not only the virus character, it's the public behavior as well. Right? So what has happened, if we talk about third wave, the factors which are going to decide the numbers and the severity of cases in the third wave, I would say first is how many people they get vaccinated. As one of the panelists rightly said, that we have to be super aggressive so that immunity develops. Second is we don't have to lower our guards even if we vaccinate larger number of people, because we all know by now that the immunity starts declining after 3 months of natural infection or even after vaccination. The recent paper which has come up in a day or two says that there's different kind of immunity, and by 8 months, immunity declines tremendously. But we don't know what is going to happen after that, because we all know that there is something called immune memory, right? Once one gets the inoculum or infection by any means, body remembers that and then reacts immediately. to that. And then the case might turn to be just mild or may not really require ICU admission. So if we talk about third wave, we might actually control that, and it may not come if we are going to take care of certain things as we are talking about appropriate behavior, and then having viral surveillance, how virus is changing its behavior so that appropriate action can be taken at appropriate times. So that's how I take that third wave.
Yeah. Let me take the next question with Dr. Behram Pardiwala. Dr. Behram, when Principal Scientific Advisor this morning, Dr. K. Raghavan, said that whether vaccinated or not, one must not forget the three principles of crushing the pandemic: masking, physical distancing, and ventilation. Yes, that's what the rule. I mean, that's what we need to do. But how do you ensure this happens in a post-lockdown situation? And I'm saying that because most states have passed the peak, and looking at the graph likely to come down in June, end June. What do we need to do while opening up?
It's really very difficult. You have to understand the behavior that people have. Once it opens up, what are you going to do? People don't listen to you. They are not going to maintain the social distancing. And half the people don't wear the mask, and if they wear the mask, it's below the mouth even. So that it becomes extremely difficult making these people understand, no matter what you do. I think it requires education, education, and education. That is the most important.
Yeah. Now, Dr. Samir Gupta, while the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights has written to the DG-ICMR today requesting to share protocols developed by ICMR for treatment and clinical management of COVID-19 positive children, what are the basics one can do right away? Because there were some questions that were asked, and that's why I'm putting this question to you, on protocols for treatment, especially for children. And we're all looking at children as the vulnerable group going forward.
Niranjan, first of all, thank you for having me. But also, this is a very important question as to what we can do for the third wave. Right now, I live in Delhi, the national capital, and we've all seen how Delhi suffered in the second wave. We had at our peak around 28,000 cases, and now today we are down to 3,000 cases. It's a dramatic improvement, but it has taken lockdown and it has taken almost 4 to 5 weeks for us to reach here. The concern is that when the lockdown opens, as social distancing and curfew measures start relaxing, people will start going out. People will go out. And when they go out, they're going to intermingle. Whether they go to work, they go to the grocery store, wherever they will go out with a little bit more freedom. And when they go out, there will be intermingling, and then there will be an increase in numbers. And that is where the social distancing and everything else comes in. What we've seen in the second wave, we've seen a lot of younger people get affected. And now the question is, in the third wave, it's the wave of children. So what can we do for children? As of now, the data we have, the children usually have, a very small percentage of children have a serious infection, which is called Kawasaki disease. It's not something which is seen fairly frequently. It's fairly infrequent, and that is certainly a good thing. And for children, once again, prevention is the best cure. You have to maintain, it's difficult to control children. They've not gone to school for now almost more than a year. So it's difficult to control them. But, we have to imbibe discipline in them. They should not go out, practice social distancing, wear masks. Most of the children are already doing that. And the other way children will be exposed to this is from the parents. So when the parents go out, the parents are probably anywhere from 25 to 45 years of age, 50 years of age. When they go out for work, they're going to bring the infection home also. So that's another thing that we have to be careful about, that, prevention is the best cure. And we're learning that with COVID, it's difficult to predict who gets very sick and who gets moderately sick.
Yeah.
And vaccinations, of course. Vaccinations also come in as a very important thing. And now vaccinations are starting, research is starting in vaccinations for children to see the effectiveness.
Yes. Let me take the next question with Dr. Anil Boraskar. Dr. Boraskar, experts tell you that, vaccination has to be ramped up. COVID-19 appropriate behavior must be practiced, and everyone agrees on this panel. If not, there is a possibility of a third wave within 6 to 8 months, is what experts are saying, that there is a 6 to 8 months period before which we have to ensure that the vaccination process is complete. Now, what do you think are the factors that have led to the drop in the vaccination drive, and what can be done?
First of all, the vaccination has to be a very easy process, right? The reason is why vaccination is not going full swing, because of so many hurdles while getting vaccination. It should be a very easy process. I don't know why it is a very closed chamber, only few centers, and there is a big queue, and people get fed up with this. So I think vaccination ideally should be decentralized, and should, place like Mumbai, we must have more than 500 centers, and should give a priority age-wise and how people are booked themselves. The vaccine which is there, that app is not functioning many times, and there is a big queue, and people get put off this, and people have to spend hours together. This can be made easy if you organize yourself properly, and there is a coordination between the vaccine giving and the people who actually organize the whole process. And this can be easily done. It's not a big deal. And in fact, all the political parties should come together. Differences are there. I'm not saying that you're not going to have differences, but they must have one common agenda, that every single individual above the age of 18 in Bombay should get vaccinated in next 3 to 4 months. If you consider this as how income tax collects the tax from people, how well they are organized. When they want to collect money, they are highly organized. They can also be very organized while giving vaccines. I think this vaccination program has to be really started with the help of maybe army, maybe people who are in police, and they put in their work, and it will definitely be a success. I can only talk about Bombay. I can talk about Maharashtra also. The point is, in Mumbai, the people are facing difficulty in getting vaccines. If you remove that difficulty, then there are people who are willing to take vaccine. There is no inertia which was formerly there. Now people know the benefits of vaccine, and not only vaccination of you and your wife, but vaccination of the entire population. The benefits of vaccination will take place when everybody is vaccinated. So that is important, and that can be easily implemented if you slightly organize your activities of vaccination.
Yeah. Keval Handa, what's the problem? Do you see, because the government has shown the different candidates, the vaccine candidates who are in the pipeline, talking about the numbers, saying that we will have close to 2.5 to 300 crore, 2.5 to 3 billion doses, or 200 crore to 300 crore doses ready by the year end. Now, all of these are numbers, and we're only talking about numbers, but do you see that somewhere we could have been a little more effective in bringing these vaccines in to India? You have some experience in that sector.
So, Niranjan, good evening for having me here.
Mr. Keval Handa.
Niranjan, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Handa.
Good. Yeah, I think we started off a little late. There was too much of dependence on our two vaccine manufacturers. There was an opportunity. If you remember, Pfizer was the first one to apply for the emergency use of vaccine. There could have been others who would have applied it, but we insisted upon them doing some clinical trials on the Indian patients, and that is how they left India immediately, and nobody else showed any interest in India. So I think that was one big mistake we made. We should have opened it up, and there was enough of data available globally for allow this company to vaccinate us. Now, having said that, but let's not cry over the split milk. Is what is now important for us is what we need to look at it. What's important for us is that in the short run, when I say short run, it's just about 2 or 3 months, we will not have enough of vaccines. Now, the only way we can get vaccine in the short run is not from these two companies, but from other companies outside. And therefore, a centralized procurement by the government has to be initiated immediately if we want to vaccinate people in the next 2 or 3 months before we roll up our vaccine, accelerate our pace of vaccines coming in, almost about 20 crores per month, going up to 30 crores per month. Now, this is the small period that we have. Now, the challenge here is if we, let's take Moderna or a Pfizer or a Johnson vaccine we bring in. Now, whoever has the jab of that vaccine need to be also ensured that the second jab will be also made available to them. And that's the guarantee which the government should be giving to them, that we will make the second jab available. If that's not available, then you are leaving these people high and dry without a second jab of vaccine. I think that requires a good planning. Therefore, I personally feel the government should take the centralized procurement of vaccine. Even with these Indian companies, the government should take the complete control of the vaccine, deploy an expert committee which will advise the government which state will require the maximum vaccination and when this vaccine should be made available to them based on analytics and based on the severity of the incidents happening in different states. That there is nothing to be emotional about it, that everybody should be vaccinated. Those who need the most should be vaccinated the first. I think that's what the government should be looking for. As we go along in the next 2 or 3 months, I tell you that we will have enough of vaccines for India, that we will have to call people to come to the vaccination center. So you talked about third wave. This is where the preparation is required. We need to now prepare for the maximizing dose of vaccine of 30 crore per month. Are the states geared up for that? I don't think so they are geared up. As of today, they are not geared up. And let's not be in calling for the vaccine. We need more vaccine. You don't have enough facilities to vaccinate people. You do not have enough trained people to vaccinate. And therefore, this is the time the state needs to gear up for the third wave before it comes, that they are ready with the vaccination centers. There are other things that we need to do on the third wave. And Ranjan, just make me say very quickly. First is learn from what mistakes we have done past and don't repeat those mistakes. The mistakes are very simple. Do you have a safety stock? No. Built up more than a peak safety stock today. Do you have a safety stock of medicine? Do you have enough of ventilators? No. Build up the ventilator stock. Do you have enough of oxygen? Yes, maybe, but start building up the oxygen. Do you have enough of beds? You don't have. Start building beds. Do you have enough of the trained healthcare workers? No, you don't have. Start building up those trained workers. Unless you do all this, and unless you build a system in place of tracking and containing, vaccination is not going to solve the problem. We are just only 2% vaccinated. 98% are not yet vaccinated. And therefore, let's depend upon things that we can do and things which are within our control and start planning for it.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail there. Okay, so let's look at some of the key concerns. Some of the key concerns, Dr. Aviral Roy. This black fungus, now more and more states declaring it an epidemic. You know, heard about it late. Facts started to come out late. Last 2 weeks, we're learning more and more every day. Centre has now issued an advisory to all states asking for black fungus to be declared as an epidemic. Now, how are you tackling this? How many cases are you seeing here in Kolkata? Tell us a little bit about it and how you're tackling with the situation.
So black fungus is really not a new disease. It's pretty old. We have known about it for many years. In fact, it's the same black mold that you get on your bread if you leave it lying around for too long. We knew this was going to happen. Every time you're giving so many millions of people steroids for a long duration of time, it's going to happen. Now, we are seeing maybe 1 or 2 cases in Calcutta so far. It's not notified in West Bengal yet, so we don't know the extent of the numbers, but I'm sure there are enough cases. The government over here has centralized procurement and distribution of amphotericin B, which is the treatment for black fungus. As to what can you do to protect yourself from it, really good infection control in your ICUs and your hospitals. That's kind of the only protection mechanism you have, apart from really going very aggressive control of their diabetes when they're in the ICU, or of their sugars if they're not diabetic in the ICU. So prevention, there is no cure for black fungus. If you do not get it in time, it has a 90% mortality rate.
Yeah. Dr. Uma Kumar, second concern about the deaths in the last 24 hours. You know, it's been a concern, the death rate in India in the last few weeks. India reporting 3,874 deaths in the last 24 hours, already touched record high of over 4,000 cases. The last few days we've seen that trend, but it's come down today. But what can we do to ensure a downward trend, or is it part of the cycle of cases that we observe and the number of deaths that are reported?
Look, I think the death rates are still on the rise because if you remember, there were issues related to getting oxygen, getting medical treatment, getting admission in the hospital. Lots of sick patients, they were getting admitted pretty late in the disease. So that is reflecting now. Had they received the treatment at the right time, this would not have happened possibly, right? So treatment at right time, and you have shown the story where people had oxygen saturation of 60% or 65-70%, and how can you expect them to survive with that much of oxygen saturation in their body for so long? Right? Organ damage starts and secondary infection sets in because of various other issues. So these death rates are expected these times. I think these are the patients who were admitted in previous weeks, and I expect and hope that it starts declining soon as the numbers are going down.
Okay. Dr. Behram, another concern, and you're a frontline worker as well, you're a doctor in Mumbai. The IMA says 270 doctors across the country have succumbed to the COVID infection. Some top doctors, experts, some of the doctors would come on our panels, and we lost some of them in the last few weeks. Now, how do you protect frontline workers from a rapidly mutating virus?
Basically, you have to protect yourself, Niranjan. You have to be very careful. When you go into these wards, when you don your personal protective equipment, when you doff your personal protective equipment, you have to be extremely careful. It is the doffing which is the most dangerous. That is the time when if you don't take care, you can get infected. Fortunately, in my hospital, we have not lost anybody as yet. We've had repeated infections. We've had patients who got infected, doctors who got infected repeatedly, but nobody seriously ill, nobody in the ICU, nobody on the ventilator. That is what is important. So prevention, prevention, and prevention. And all of us have all got our second vaccination also. And I can't emphasize it more. As you said, the virus is mutating. The only way you can prevent the virus from mutating is to vaccinate. Because if the virus loves to get other people infected, because the moment you the virus infects somebody else, it has a chance to mutate. So you have to prevent mutation from occurring. That is the most important. And if I may not get another chance to say, but let me tell you about what is black fungus. I think it's more media build-up. I think all my colleagues will agree with me. Yes, we get the cases, but they've been existent before. They've been there. We've seen it in diabetic patients. And it's something, as Dr. Aviral said, it leads to 90% mortality. My colleague, Dr. Anil Boraska, will tell you out.
Yeah.
It's very important.
No, I'm glad you said that because, I think on behalf of the media, it's our job to sort of answer some of those questions when they come to us, and it's a recent. I know some media houses may be playing it up much more than the rest, but I think that's a relevant question, though, now that most states in the center are taking note. But let's look at some of the positive outcomes this week. And let me put one question to Dr. Sameer Gupta of some of the advancements in our battle against COVID-19 in the last 1 week. For example, there's been a self-use rapid action kit to test against COVID-19 in the last, I think it happened today. And Cipla has launched a RT-PCR test kit. DRDO has launched a new drug. So we've made certain advancements as well this week, Dr. Gupta.
That's something, let me tell you, Niranjan, when the COVID pandemic started and we heard about the first case in the end of December 2019, that's when, 31st of December, if I'm not mistaken, is when China said we found this new virus. It was the entire scientific community of the world got into action. It is just phenomenal, the amount of advancements and science we've seen come out of all over. Within 2 weeks, the New England Journal publication came out where they said, where they decoded the virus, this is the virus, how the virus looks, this is how the mRNA is, this is the strain. And and a year later, in a record number of time, not even a year later, it was about the Pfizer vaccine was available for public in November in the US. So in about 11 months from first hearing of the virus, we had a vaccination, and that vaccination was being put to public use. So the entire scientific community around the world is currently working on the virus, trying to see how we can test easily, how we can treat. And we are always talking about vaccination. I would like to bring out one point, that for us to successfully reduce the mortality, for us to successfully get rid of the third wave, not only do we need to vaccinate, we need to test, we need to isolate, and we need a good treatment. We need a good treatment, and if we can get a good treatment, then this is going to be a significant improvement, because the virus will keep mutating, right? And will the virus have the escape mechanism which is there against the vaccine or not? These are questions which are being posed. A lot of clinical trials are being done, and data is being studied for this. But if we are able to get a good treatment for the virus, then also we will be able to reduce the morbidity and the mortality that comes along with getting the infection. So yes, there are definitely some positive news with home kits being launched, with new treatments coming up, and we are certainly, as a community, as a scientific community that I'm a part of, we've certainly made headway in the right direction.
Yeah. And let me take that question forward on the issue of medicines and drugs in the treatment of COVID-19. Now, there are some questions that our viewers had in the last 1 week. Dr. Boraskar, let me put that question to you. Some asking about the effectiveness of remdesivir. Now, last we checked, remdesivir was the most wanted drug in the market. And suddenly you see these reports and some experts thinking twice about the use of remdesivir. So what's going on, and what is your view on the effectiveness of these drugs and the kind of drugs that we're using in the treatment for COVID-19?
Now let me tell you that we have in our hospital, we have treated a large number of COVID patients in Raj Hospital. We had initially 120 patients of COVID, and now we have got 52. Now what we did, actually I want to tell this very enlightened panel, that you need to audit use of drugs and oxygen. Our hospital, Raj Hospital, has no oxygen shortage, has no drug shortage, has no problem, because we give audited oxygen. We don't give more oxygen. Second thing, the steroid use has to be rationalized, and you cannot start steroid from day one and in large doses. Ideally, you have to wait for 6 to 7 days before you give major dose of steroids. So we audit each and every patient's drug treatment, and our mortality is lowest. How we have achieved it? By strict auditing the usage of oxygen, drugs, and various types of drugs and various protocols which are keep on changing. That's very interesting. ICMR, BMC, everybody after 10 days take out new guidelines. Frankly, I do not follow any guidelines. I follow guidelines which fits my conscience and are based on common sense, and I have a lowest mortality. How do I do it? By auditing, frequent auditing usage of oxygen and drugs, and we are very strict about use of steroids. And the commonest cause of fungal infections is absolutely indiscriminate use of steroids. The steroids are started too early, too massive dose, and your immunity in a diabetic patient is particularly our hospital, diabetic hospital. And there are a lot of new onset diabetics who were never diabetic earlier. The virus itself causes pancreatitis and can cause diabetes at the outset. So this needs to be treated very aggressively. We treat our diabetes very aggressively in what is known as TIR. What is a TIR? People may not have heard this concept. It is a time in range. The time in range is the blood sugars are between 120 to 180 in about 70 to 80% of your day time. That is time in range. We maintain that in our patient by giving proper dose of insulin, maybe more frequent dose, maybe long-acting insulin, and we are very vigilant about it. And that is why our center has the lowest mortality, lowest fungal infections. And I'm not saying we are the greatest, but we have a lot of common sense physicians who are treating this disease, and they are going by their instinct more than and their previous training and fundamentals of medicine, rather than going by new theories and new drugs. Every day, there is some write-up about a drug that this drug is not good. The people happened with chloroquine, with doxycycline. People keep on changing. So you have to use your common sense. And that is what I have been telling you, that this is based on common sense and not based on multiple research papers. You know how the papers are written. And this is a very short time. Our experience about this disease is only 9 months. So we are ignorant. As our knowledge is increasing in arithmetic progression, our ignorance is increasing geometric progression. And we are becoming smarter day by day. And therefore, ultimately, what's still is the common sense medicine. My friends, the drugs will come and go. One drug, they swear by it. Other people swear at it. So how do you treat? And therefore, you have to use a basic common sense medicine. Thank you. I'm a very blunt man, and you have to tolerate me, but I can't help it. Thank you very much.
No, but that's fantastic. Thank you. You know, I have a question. Common sense approach. Let me tell you, the thing about COVID-19 has been, it's been all about common sense. Common sense to take basic precautions, COVID appropriate behavior, all common sense. Even medication is based on common sense. I'll tell common sense to another level. I'll tell you, it's gone to such a level. Dr. Gupta, you can take the next one. Today, the government has had to warn about self-styled remedy. People think they have so much common sense that they're all starting to treat themselves. I'll tell you what happened today. Very interesting. The government had to intervene. A union minister had to say on record that stop this self-styled remedy to treat COVID-19 while chairing a meeting about an awareness campaign for officers and staff of the development of the northeastern region especially, of how prevalent self-medication has actually become after COVID-19, and just how dangerous are these self-styled remedies, Dr. Gupta? It's okay to have common sense, but I'm talking only purely in the case of patients. Yeah,
self-medication is not something which is old in India. As a medical practitioner, having practiced both in the US and India, I can tell you self-medication is not something uncommon. What is the most common thing you do? You have a sore throat, you have something, you go and you buy antibiotics and you take it. So this is just a translation of that. And, with the amount of data which has now become available, whether it's WhatsApp University or, or friends and family, people just tend to self-medicate. They're like, I read online, and I read on this blog, and I read on this news article that this medication may be useful. So yes, self-medication is something which is certainly very prevalent. In fact, I know some people who self-medicated themselves with steroids. They self-medicated, their oxygen saturation started falling, or they were not having the fever was breaking or something of that sort. They started self-medicating them with steroids. And that is a big problem, like one of my panelists said, that indiscriminate use of steroids has led to some of the complications, reduction of immunity, coming out of mucormycosis, the black fungus we're talking about, now some reports coming out of white fungus. So, self-medication does more harm than good. One more thing, Niranjan, we are going to see is because of the indiscriminate use of antibiotics that we've seen in the pandemic, very strong antibiotics being taken by everyone. When given a period of time, what I foresee is a lot of antibiotic resistance coming up. And that is that's something we have often talked about in the medical community, about antibiotic resistance, multi-drug resistant bacteria. And the way everybody's been popping in antibiotics, I just hope that does not become the next concern in a few years.
Yeah. Kevalanda, you made a very good point. The last time you intervened, especially on the issues of vaccines and our learnings from the pandemic, especially on the preparedness front. Now, I was just going through a few numbers. I'm just trying to pull that out. Now, see, as far as oxygen and medical supplies reaching stage, I was speaking to Devi Shetty was on our panel a few days back. He spoke to Republic TV in great detail, talking about what we need to do. Now, he's part of the Karnataka task force. Now, he said no country in the world could have pulled off what India did as far as oxygen supplies are concerned. To sort of, move the trains, the flights and everything that we possibly and humanly could. No other country in the world could have done it, right? Now, that's what we are as a nation. We can do things. Now, looking at that example, for example, cumulatively 13,000 oxygen concentrators, 15,000 oxygen cylinders, 19 oxygen generation plants, 10,000 ventilators provided so far from the international aid received. Now, what it also tells you is, okay, everyone's come to help you. You've found your formula, but going forward, what are some of the lessons that the entire medical industry and the government and everyone involved in this will have to make and take?
So I think the first important lesson they have to take is that the remdesivir shortage was mainly because during December to March, there was no demand and they were working at 10% of capacity. Whatever medicines you require, you need to build that safety stock. Keep all your ventilators on working conditions. Ensure that every bed is connected with oxygen. Ensure that the oxygen supply is available 24/7. Increase your bed to the level of the 2 times the peak level today. Improve your healthcare training. Get the nurses in, paramedical guys in. Create more centers now in rural areas. Your experience is more now in cities and metros, but this is going to rural areas. What about rural areas? Revive your community centers, your PC centers, primary centers. Arm them with all the medicines, all the guidance and SOP required. More important, we need to work at the center level to be up and ahead of the next strain that is likely to come. And that is the strain that may come in the third wave. What are we going to do to fight that strain when it comes? Are we ready with any protocol to fight that strain? Is something where the government at the senior level need to be working upon. Work on a mix and match vaccines. There's already work going on between Pfizer and the AstraZeneca vaccine. If that is approved, that's another great support you will have to fight against various strains. So try working on different types of combination of vaccine to fight the strains. And nothing like containing it by tracking it. We don't have a tracking systems. Nobody's working on it. Track, and you will be able to contain it. And don't allow people to enjoy and party around. Compulsorily, masking is to be required for a longer period of time. If people don't wear masks, find them, put them behind bars. I'm okay with that. And those types of strong measures need to be done. The masking, keep distance, washing hands is so critical to fight against the battle. And when the vaccines are come at 30 crores per month, I would like to ask the question to all the state governments, are you ready to vaccinate your people? What is your vaccination plan? Show me the plan that you can vaccinate 30 crore per month. You don't have a plan right now. How are you going to vaccinate so many people? Let's start working on it.
Well, very interesting. Now you made a mention of mixing and matching vaccines. Very interesting because there are some studies. You mentioned one of them. Let me take that question to Dr. Aviral Roy. Dr. Aviral Roy, you think that's a possibility? Looking at India's situation specifically, I think India will be a fantastic case study in that if it happens.
In fact, there's recently a study that came out of Spain that actually answers your question. That says the AstraZeneca vaccine followed by the Pfizer vaccine is actually safe. And in fact, that is probably going to be your most effective strategy because you cannot guarantee vaccine production, vaccine delivery across the board. So if you can take one vaccine and you can follow it up with another vaccine, depending on availability, it gives you many more options. It gives you more flexibility in terms of delivery. Areas where, you may not have the infrastructure for cold storage, you can give them, you can prioritize more robust vaccines over there, but areas which need more cold storage facilities, you can deliver other vaccines there. It gives you more operational and logistical flexibility to do so. And honestly speaking, that's our only realistic option in having a super aggressive strategy going forward.
Yeah. Okay, Dr. Uma Kumar, one concern is rural India. We've been reporting from different corners of the country, and we are seeing that either there's a lack of awareness. Of course, there is a lack of medical infrastructure. That's a fact. We have to accept it. Lack of medical infrastructure, lack of awareness. It's spread to very remote regions in the middle of the hinterland. In tribal areas, for example. And looking at the example of the isolation techniques and how we've had to innovate. For example, Bhosi, a village of 6,000 people in Nanded district, has showed the way of fighting the COVID-19 pandemic by simply adopting the path of isolation after 119 people were found affected. Now, what is also clear is that while it may have reached the hinterland, but just following some basics, some basic measures like isolating, for example, has worked wonders, isn't it? For India, I'm talking about specifically.
As long as there is vulnerable population, the virus is going to attack and the numbers will keep increasing, and so is the mortality. If you talk about remote areas, definitely people don't know about it. I have interacted a couple of families in the remote areas. They are just not aware what it is. And if they are having some cough and cold, they keep on having it around the year. So, one is they are not aware about this infection. Second is they are not aware about the severity of this infection. They do not have any medical infrastructure to report to. Isolation, if you talk about a family of 12 living in one room, we cannot expect them to be in isolation. We have to understand the ground reality and the way we Indians live and work. So according to that, strategies are to be devised, and there are various ways of looking at it. Isolation, obviously, we cannot have at the home, but there are peripheral services. There are voluntary organizations which can actually work on it, and we can actually control.
Yeah. Dr. Behram, there are reports that suggest testing and tracing strategies that can help India overcome this week. Now, there is a concern with some states which are testing lower. Now, in the Mumbai example, if you take the Mumbai example alone, now testing was a very effective strategy in fighting against COVID-19. I think we've reached the below 1,000 level. Now, how important is it for you to test and trace in the fight against COVID-19?
I think, Niranjan, it's extremely important. You have to test, you have to test, you have to test. One of the mechanisms by which you can test is the RAT, the rapid antigen test. Of course, RT-PCR is the gold standard. But when you want an immediate result, you do a RAT. For example, all the hospitals now have got COVID and non-COVID areas. If a patient comes in for admission in the non-COVID area, we have to make sure that he is not COVID positive. So you have to do a RAT on him, which is then followed up with an RT-PCR. During the period that if he's RAT negative and the RT-PCR is awaited, he's kept in an isolated area in the non-COVID section. Because we've had bad experiences in the past. You have a patient who comes in into the non-COVID area and tests positive because it's so widespread in the population now. You have patients coming in for surgery who test positive. You have pregnant women who come in positive. So where does it end? Unless you investigate, unless you test, you will never be able to contain this epidemic.
Yeah. Okay, last couple of minutes, let me take a question with Dr. Boraskar. Now, Dr. Boraskar, this week is going to be critical also because, you've had infections limited to below 2% of the population. India has managed to limit the cases to overall affected population to about 1.8%. Now, the other good news, some states showing very, very good improvement. For example, Uttar Pradesh recording a 62% decline in cases since its peak on 30th of April. So I think this week is going to be critical, isn't it? Dr. Boraskar.
Actually, I personally feel, I personally feel that it is not this week. This is next 3 months are critical. I can't understand on what grounds you people say this week is critical. This week is okay, we are a little better off, but it is not going to continue like this. Let me warn you. This virus is here to stay. And we have to have a COVID appropriate behavior at all times. That should be a way of our life. You cannot say that this will continue for a week. No, I think this is going to continue to the June end. And maybe if you are lucky, the percentage will go down. But you cannot say that this is only 1 week. No, sir. I know it very well. Again, this is based on the common sense. And let me tell you, medicine is highly developed common sense. The common sense tells me that this is not going to last for only 1 week. This is going to last for a month or maybe 3 months.
Yes.
Get it very clear. Don't build hopes unnecessarily because people will become relaxed. The first thing they'll do is pick up their bags and go for shopping. And for what, I don't understand. So this euphoria must not set in. People
Not at all.
should remain under the constant vigil. I personally feel we should observe the behavior as what we are doing and we should be very, very careful.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I think you got my question wrong, but let me tell you, it is critical.
My take-home message.
It's critical. Yeah, it is critical. We actually see it in some parts. We are broadcasting from Mumbai. You're in Mumbai. Dr. Behram Pardiwala of Wokhad Hospital, he's also from Mumbai. And we see that, that small window that you get in the morning when people can go out shopping, I think before 11 a.m., it's crowded. And we know what the situation can be when you actually open up and what a big, nightmare that can be. At this point, I'd like to thank Dr. Uma Kumar, Dr. Aviral Roy, Dr. Behram Pardiwala, Keval Handa, Dr. Samir Gupta, Dr. Anil Boraskar. Thank you for giving us your time this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And at 10 p.m. we have the committed broadcast from across India. We're getting you reports on how India is battling COVID-19. The only channel getting you the reports non-stop since the outbreak of the pandemic to tell you how we are fighting back as a country. That's coming up next. Stay tuned.